Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 890B, and today's date is February 10th, 2016, and the title of the episode is U.S. Government Intends to Boost Surveillance on the People. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, in the U.S., we see that manufacturing is dying. We see that the service industry is heading in the same direction as manufacturing. And food producers, guess what? They're going to be heading in the same direction at this point. Because what we're seeing is things are definitely moving from west to east. As we know, Russia is going to be the biggest exporter of wheat. And they are saying that they're not going to be purchasing, starting February 15th, corn and soybeans from the U.S. They are no longer welcome in Russia. And this is coming from the country's food and safety watchdog. Putin says he's going to be the largest producer, the biggest exporter of non-GMO food. And they're saying that the products coming from the United States, they pose a real threat to Russia. And the U.S. guarantees are not valid. And they're restricting the corn and the soybeans. Now, Russia has asked the U.S. officials, is the corn inspected with checks that look for microbiological conditions? And the U.S. officials said, no, it's done without checking. And Russia's saying they're dumbfounded that every batch of products should come with a microbiological certificate that guarantees food safety. It turns out that the products are not being tested at all. The watchdog in 2015 found 64 cases of bacterial contamination in U.S. soybeans, and in 2016, it found 4 additional cases, and Russia's saying, okay, we've had enough of this. We are now restricting these type of foods. Now, the White House is out there, and we know President Obama is pushing climate change, global warming, and we know the climate is always changing, but they're trying to convince the population that it's humans that are changing the climate. But we see at this point that a lot of this is a complete lie. They fudge the numbers. They manipulate, massage the temperatures of the earth to convince everyone that we have a major problem on our hands. And the Supreme Court right now, they halted Obama's sweeping climate rules for power plants. In a 5-4 ruling on Tuesday, the Supreme Court agreed to block the enforcement of Obama's emission plan. And Obama is saying, well, we reject what the Supreme Court says. Now, we know this was a 5-4 ruling. And we know that the NSA spies on the Supreme Court judges, other justices, government officials. And I wouldn't be surprised if this was overturned at a later date and all of a sudden we have the opposite 5-4 ruling of where they approve of Obama's climate plan. Because we've seen this before with Obamacare. Now, we know the government is continually spying on the people. And in the state of Maryland, they're saying that they have the right to track you without a warrant whenever you turn on your phone or make a call. They're saying you don't have privacy rights. There was a case involved a person named Karen Andrews, who was tracked by police using a Stingray, a device which tricks phones into thinking it's a cell tower. And Andrews was tracked without a warrant. And they're saying, listen, if you don't want to be tracked, shut your phone. Don't leave it on. Don't make calls on it. Well, I hate to say it, there's something called the Fourth Amendment, which tells the government you cannot spy on us, you cannot you can't listen to our conversations, you can't track us without a warrant. But they're saying, no. We can do it whenever we want. Well, I'm sorry, this is still my private information. It's not open to the public. And you can't track me. But they don't care. We see that U.S. intelligence agencies are going to boost surveillance on the American public. Now, Clapper, James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, he made the remarks when he was testifying in front of the Senate Armed Services Intelligence Committee, saying that, okay, because of the threats facing the United States, we're going to boost the surveillance on the American people, and they might use new generation of smart household devices to increase their surveillance capabilities. So what does this mean? Well, they're going to use objects, physical objects, devices that connect to the internet, like vehicles, buildings, electronics, software, sensors, or anything else. And they will turn these devices into spying apparatuses where they can listen in and understand what is going on. So basically they're saying, we don't care what the Bill of Rights say. We don't care that you have these rights. The Fourth Amendment, it makes no difference to us. We will continually spy on every single person. We will track you. We will monitor you. And we will gain access to your devices. And this is how we're approaching the problem of terrorism. Well, this has nothing to do with terrorism. This has to do with the United States government central bankers so worried about the population, so worried about what the people are thinking, so worried about their positions, their power structure, that they need to keep an eye on as many people as they possibly can and basically correlate the data to find out where the threat is. Because as we know, they're setting up a task force to go after anti-government extremists. And they're using Oregon as the test case. And we see why all of this is happening at this point. We see what's happening in France right now, where the government is taking on more of the power of more like a dictatorship, where the people don't have the rights. And we see that each country, it's definitely moving in this direction. Now, the United States Preventative Services Task Force, they're making a recommendation right now. And they want mandatory depression screening for all Americans. They want to force health insurance companies to pay for the screening, and to be on Obamacare, to be on this insurance, they want everyone screened for depression. Well, we see there's a couple of agendas associated with this. One, the pharmaceutical companies, they're going to be issuing drugs to many people, and their profits are going to soar. Two, under Obama's executive orders for gun control, guess what? If you have depression and you're on medication, you can't own a weapon. Three, as the economy comes down, they can keep everyone doped up. People won't know what's going on. And I'm sure there's many more associated with this. And we see everything that they've been doing with the executive orders and Obamacare, how all this is now fitting into each other and where they're headed with this. I mean, we are in very scary times right now. And every day that passes, it's getting scarier and scarier. The rights are being chipped away from the people. And this is spreading. And eventually, people are going to wake up when it's too late. It always happens like this. Well, it's good for the people, they say. Well, it's okay. Until it affects them and they say, wait a minute. What do you mean you can just come right into my house without a warrant? What do you mean you can just look into my bank account? What do you mean you can look through my car? When this starts to happen, it's already too late. They already have the control. And this is why everyone at this point needs to stand up and say, no, this is not okay anymore. And we need to start by getting rid of the central bank. We need to get rid of most of the government. We need to basically restart the entire system without the central bank. And we need to set up new rules for the government where corporations do not donate to their campaign. No foreign entity or lobbyist group can donate to their campaign. They are not allowed to accept any type of funds in any manner whatsoever. Because these people in government, they're supposed to be working for the people, not for themselves, not for a foreign country, not for a central bank, not for a corporation, for the people. Every dime that comes out of the government is supposed to be used for the people, for the country. That's it. And we need to get back to that. Now, we see the US, UK, South Korea, they are using the propaganda to really push their agendas. We see that the US is in talks with South Korea to move in the THAAD missile system. We see that the US is talking to other countries around the area to increase military troops in the Pacific. And we see at this point their whole entire agenda right now is to demonize North Korea and to separate South Korea completely from North Korea. Because South Korea right now said on Wednesday that it's going to shut down the last joint industrial park with North Korea in response to their rocket launch, which they launched a satellite into space, which every country is doing. The US does it, Europe does it, China does it, Russia does it, and North Korea does it. And the satellite is in orbit. They notified the UN, but we can see what they're doing at this point. They are completely separating themselves from North Korea, preparing and getting ready for this major war. We see that Kiev, they're never ever going to fulfill the Minsk peace deal. Sergei Lavrov is saying that Kiev is continually skirting its responsibility to fulfill the Minsk Agreement. It's gone on way too long. It should have been completed by December. We're now in February. And they're saying it's clear that Russia is trying to fulfill the Minsk Agreement, but we need Ukraine, their side, to complete their end. But we see the Minsk Agreement will not be fulfilled. Why? Because the US would no longer be able to oppose Europe lifting its sanctions against Russia. If they allow this to happen, the southeastern section would be lost. They're not going to let this happen. They rather fight to get it back. And this is why we're seeing a buildup. This is why we're seeing Kiev continually firing upon the southeastern people. Even though the corporate media is not reporting on this, it is still happening right now. People are still dying there. And we can see they're just waiting for the spring, like they did last time, and they will try another offensive. This time they're a little bit better prepared. We know the US, UK, NATO, all in there training their soldiers. And NATO right now, they're seeking to build up forces in the Black Sea. And they're going to acquire intelligence in the Black Sea. So they're going to bring in more ships into the Black Sea. And we see that the UK is also bringing in 5 warships to the area. Britain's Royal Navy is preparing to send 5 additional warships to NATO Maritime Force and contribute more than 6,000 NATO armored force to be deployed on a rotational basis in the 6 countries bordering Russia. So they're going to deploy the HMS Iron Duke, a Type 23 frigate, a billion-pound value Type 45 destroyer, 1 of 6 commissioned, and 3 minesweepers. And the British maritime deployment to NATO, this is the first one of its kind in 6 years. The question is, what are they planning? Why are they doing this? Where are they positioning them exactly? We know a lot of this is going to be in the Black Sea. They're going to rotate out. And we're going to have to watch this situation very, very carefully. Out in Israel, Netanyahu is planning to construct huge security fence all around Israel. Let's see. We have Tunisia doing it. We have Turkey building walls. We have other European countries building walls to keep the refugees out. We see Israel, they're building walls to protect themselves. It seems like everyone's building walls to protect themselves. To protect themselves from what? Well, it looks like they're going to try to protect themselves from this upcoming war and people fleeing everywhere. Because we already see in Europe that if they can't get everything under control, the Schengen might be suspended for 2 years, where people will not be able to pass through all these countries freely. The countries will take control of their borders, which a lot of them have already done. Austria, Hungary, they've already done this. They said we have until March, maybe the summer. And if they can't come up with any type of solution, the Schengen goes down the drain. And that's it. Out in Iraq, we understand the Iraqi forces are preparing and getting ready to go into Mosul. And the United States says, yeah, we're not going to be a part of this. This is coming from Lieutenant General Vincent Stewart, Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, saying, yeah, at this time, the Mosul operation is going to be way too complicated. Almost like that Ramadi offensive. We weren't really involved in that either because, it was just too complicated because we'd have to defend the Islamic State and everyone would know that we were defending them. And the same thing's going to happen in Mosul. So we're just out at this point. So basically what is happening is the U.S. is stepping back and they know at this point there's nothing they can do because it would completely be obvious that they were protecting their proxy army. So most likely they're going to try to get them out of there, airlift them out. We saw this happening in Ramadi. But the Iraqi troops are getting ready and prepared to go in there, and most likely they will clear that area. Lavrov is out there saying that ISIS leaders stay in constant contact with Turkish government. They say they're developing a new approach to the war in Syria. They have intelligence that the Islamic State Command is holding backdoor negotiations with Turkish leadership for this new plan. And we see a new plan developing. We see the U.S. has commandeered an airfield in Syria. They're extending it to bring in C-130 transport planes. Turkey is building a wall. We have Jay Johnson from DHS. He's assisting there. Israel is putting up a fence all around its country. Tunisia is putting up a wall between Libya and itself. We see amphibious warships from the U.S. sailing over to the Mid-East, the same ships that were used back in 2013 during that sarin gas false flag with Assad. And we see they're getting prepared. And they're trying to push the peace talks once again in Syria. Moscow saying it's impossible to negotiate with the U.S. and the Saudi-backed opposition. The Syrian opposition, they demand a ceasefire right now, and they want humanitarian aid before talks continue. Now, it looks like they tried to assassinate Assad. His mother passed away, and they were having a funeral convoy, and there were missile attacks on the convoy. 4 of his convoy members, they were killed in the attack, and they were trying to hit Assad. Now, most likely, actually, 99.999%. It was the US, it was Israel, it was the UK. I mean, it could have been any of the terrorist groups. They got instructions. They knew where Assad was going to be. And they made an attempt on his life. Because that would solve a lot of their problems, wouldn't it? Let's get rid of Assad. But remember, Russia is not there because of Assad. Russia is there to keep the country's sovereignty, saying no country should be allowed to invade another country and replace whatever government is there. The people should decide. And I completely agree with that. NATO is going to continue to deploy Patriot batteries to Turkey. They have the AWACS surveillance planes. They have air policing. They have their Patriot batteries there. They have their ships in the Mediterranean and in the Black Sea. NATO is surrounding Turkey at this point. Why? Is there really a threat to Turkey? Not at this point. Is Turkey a threat to Syria? Yes. Is Turkey going to mount some type of offensive in Syria? It's starting to look like that. Now, the UN is telling Turkey to open its borders, end the bombing in Aleppo, and we know Syria and Russia, they have control of Aleppo right now. And this is a big, big problem for the US, for the Islamic State. And at this point, we are looking at a situation where the US is coming up with a brand new plan to go into Syria, Iraq, Libya. What is the plan? What are they planning to do at this point? Because we already hear that Saudi Arabia is saying, hey, we'll let you have our 150,000 paid mercenary troop. If you need them, you can have them. The U.S. says we'll not rule out the Saudi ground troop. Because as we know, the U.S. at this point, they can't bring in their own soldiers because they don't have authorization. It's pending in Congress. There's like 2 or 3 different bills in there. To get that passed, they're going to need some type of an event to convince the people that we need to bring troops over there. But don't worry, the U.S. spy chiefs are out there. They're predicting that in the year of 2016, the Ukraine war won't end. The war in Syria is going to get worse. And they called it a litany of doom. So what this tells me is they already have the plan. They're already staging all the military assets, all the ground troops, and everything else. We might even see another terrorist group come out of this. Who knows? But we can see they need to create some type of an event to convince the world of why they need to be there and go into Syria. And we're going to have to watch the situation very, very carefully because they're getting ready to do something big. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.